Welcome back to the Us versus Them channel. I'm your host Vince, and today we're going to get into another fight happening this weekend on the UFC 320 card. This is Ramiz Brahimaj versus Austin Vanderford. Brahimaj is sitting at a plus 200 underdog, and Vanderford is at a minus 265 favorite. I will say that price tag for Vanderford is a little pricey for me right now. He came in as an underdog in his debut fight against Nikolai Vetrinikov. He came in an underdog in that one, and he did earn a dominant win in that fight. He used his wrestling, which is kind of Vanderford special. Use the wrestling, get on top, get ground and pound, and find damage where you can. But the fact that he comes in this fight as a pretty, I mean, not a sizable, but a minus 265 favorite, like I said, that's just a little pricey for me, especially given the fact that Brahimaj is more of a battle-tested UFC, fighter. He's 4-3 in the UFC, so this is going to be his 8th fight in the organization. But one thing to note about Brahimaj is he hasn't really beaten anybody of value. His best win, at least based on records to date, is against Billy Ray Golf, who is untested at best. We just don't really know how Golf is. And all the other wins are against guys who have been cut. Mickey Gall, for instance, guys like that. So, even though he has more fights in the UFC, I do think that they have a similar background as far as when it comes to their strength and schedule. Vanderford has been fighting tough dudes since pretty much the beginning of his fighting career. He fought Adam Fugate in his second fight. Fugate ended up being he's a UFC alum, so he got a win over him in a second fight. He was signed to Bellator 3 or 4 fights into his career and faced decent competition, at least above average for the Bellator scene all the way throughout. The competition kept getting stiffer because he kept winning fights. He does have 2 KO losses. That's the only times he's lost, both of which by KO. So that's a little bit concerning. His chin is a little bit of a concern. But given the fact that Brahimaj doesn't really, I mean, he has knockout power. He has shown that recently. But he only has 1 KO win. So these two kind of clash. Their styles kind of clash. And I think they might be, honestly, maybe poor matchups for each other, really. Like I said, when you look at Brahimaj's topology, the first thing you're gonna notice is he has almost every single win by submission. He has 12 wins in his pro career, 11 of which come by submission, and 1 of them was by KO. But in that KO fight, he was fighting Mickey Gall, who again, maybe not UFC competition, UFC caliber, especially as he gotten later in his career. He's not UFC caliber anymore. But, Brahimaj leaned on his striking in that fight. He didn't try to grapple at all. He didn't try to initiate any grappling, any pummeling that we've seen in the past. He just stood and striked with him. And that shows that he's at least improving in his striking enough to where he thinks he can stand in front of a UFC fighter. So that's promising for him. I've already said Vanderford has a questionable chin. I don't know if it's completely battle-tested yet. On the other hand, Brahimaj has a really solid chin. He's only been knocked out once in his entire career, and that was against Max Griffin in that fight. It wasn't really a KO necessarily. Max caught him with an elbow right on his ear, damn near knocked his fucking ear off. And the ref saw it, and I think the ref was grossed out by it and stopped the fight. He wasn't concussed by any means. It wasn't a traditional knockout win or a TKO win, I guess. But the fact that, I guess he took a lot of damage to the ear, so the ref just seen enough and he stopped it. Even still, Brahimaj was contesting the stoppage. He was like, dude, fuck it. It's my ear. I'm ready to keep going. So he is tough as nails, and he's really fucking durable. So just given the fact that he has started to lean on his striking a little bit more, and Vanderford has shown that he has at least a questionable chin, that could be something that we have to watch for in this fight. Both of these dudes lean on their grappling skills to win. Obviously, Brahimaj does that because he has 11 submission victories. But, 4 of those come by way of guillotine. So that's, obviously that's grappling. But that's early on in a grappling exchange. Somebody shoots a bad shot, boom, you could jump the gilly, old Dustin Poirier style. But, Vanderford, on the other hand, like I said, he uses his wrestling to win fights. That's what we saw in his fight against, in his last fight against Nikolai. He was able to get takedowns early in the fight, keep him on the ground, land the vicious ground and pound, and get the stoppage. Austin Vanderford uses his wrestling for vicious ground and pound, whereas Brahimaj uses his grappling to set up his submissions. So it's really going to be a clash of styles. I do see this fight potentially going to the ground, and it'll be really interesting to see who gets the advantage there. Vanderford, like I said, he likes to shoot his takedowns. He likes to utilize his wrestling. but he needs to be very mindful of the submission game of Brahimaj. Just given the fact that Brahimaj, I think he has 5 ghillie chokes in his career. You know, that's something that obviously is set up by a shot that can be at least a little bit defended. If he sets it up and times it really nicely, he can get the takedowns, and I do think that's a definite possibility in this fight. But if he tries to force any takedowns, his neck's going to be right there for a submission. Another important factor to note in this fight is the fact that Vanderford is jumping back down to 170 after spending most of his career at 185. This isn't his first go at 170, which is really promising. Usually if somebody comes from a weight class they've been at their entire career, that first cut is questionable. You don't really know how it's going to affect their performance the next day. So the fact that this is his 3rd fight in a row at 170, and he's looked good in the last 2 fights. He got an LFA win, that he earned a knockout win on that one. He set that knockout up with a fucking jab, just a straight jab, and that's what started the knockout sequence. Then he got on top, finished with ground and pound like typical Vanderford style. But, you know, I think he's able to do stuff like that and that he wasn't able to do in his career because he still carries most of that power, or if not all that power that he had as a middleweight, and now he's fighting at welterweight. And like I said, the fact that he's already got two weight cuts and performances under his belt and looked good in those, I do think that the size advantage is going to lie with Vanderford, and the strength advantage too. For my official prediction, like I said, this one is kind of tricky. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Brahimaj just never won a decision fight, and then you got Vanderford on the other side, who is undefeated in submission or in decisions. Neither guy has been submitted before, and Brahimaj has 11 of his 12 wins by submission. So that's another thing. The only time that Vanderford has lost is by KO, and Brahimaj only has 1 KO in his career. So the way that these things keep matching up, somebody's O has to go in one of these categories. That's just the reality. So it's going to be something unexpected that I think that happens during this fight. Another tricky factor in this prediction is the fact that both of them lean on their grappling, but they lean on it in entirely different ways. That's really what's going to make this tricky. The one thing that makes me start to lean a little bit towards Vanderford is the fact that he is going to have a size advantage. We have seen in past fights where Brahimaj has lost. He lost to guys that were just bigger than him. Thimbo Garimbo, Court McGee, guys like that. They just had a size advantage, and they were able to utilize that size to pressure him and wear him down. They both put him against the cage, out-pummeled him on the cage, scored takedowns where they could, and Brahimaj, who is a motherfucker to hold down, honestly. He really seems like he's tough to hold down. But they just, you know, as he works up, keep him back against the cage and keep the pummeling action going. So they just wore on Brahimaj on his cardio, and they were eventually able to wear him down and get the wins they were looking for. So I think Vanderford would be smart to use that approach in this fight. If I was him, I would not go for double leg takedowns unless they're blatantly there. I'd use the upper body, the clinch work to put him against the cage, pummel him against the cage, and then that's where you can slide down in a more methodical approach to get underneath his butt, lock underneath his butt, big takedowns, and that's where we can get ground and pound. I can see that happening, and because of, like I said, because of his size advantage too in this fight, I'm leaning towards Vanderford to get this one done. I think Vanderford is going to get this one done by submission, or by decision. Not submission. Wouldn't that be some bitch if he does one by submission? But I do think Vanderford is going to get this one done by decision. But, you know, the reality is the line is not where it should be, I don't think. I think this should be closer, not quite a pick'em fight, but definitely closer to a pick'em fight. So as we go along throughout this week, I think it's important that we keep an eye on the line and see what it does. If the Vanderford by decision is around that plus 200-ish area or worse, then the move is going to be to go with Brahimaj, because him just to win by just money line at plus 200, I do see some value in that. That's all I got for this breakdown. Come back for the next video where we're going to be breaking down Punahele Soriano versus Nikolai Ventritikov, or however you say his name, somebody that we just broke down a little bit with Austin Vanderford. So stop by for that breakdown. I do see a nice path to victory for that one as well. I love the prediction on that one. So stop by for that. And that's all I got for this video. I'm fucking out of here.